Yes.
Yes,
I
we
can hear you.
Okay, just let me know when we should start.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon and good morning to our friends on the West Coast. Welcome to the virtual public engagement workshop. I'm Stephanie Carver. I'm Transportation Director with the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission in Saco, Maine. Today's presenter, Carolyn Nelson, is from the Federal Highway Administration in Washington, D.C., and she'll discuss innovative virtual public involvement techniques that can be used by state DOTs, transit agencies, MPOs, and RTPOs. Virtual platforms provide opportunities for disseminating information differently than in the past, and they can potentially accelerate planning and project development processes. While virtual public involvement can be useful during any time to provide information and seek public involvement from individuals who may not have easy access to in-person engagement events, it can provide ways for continuing public outreach when in-person events are impossible to do, such as circumstances like our current COVID-19 crisis. Carolyn Nelson is a civil engineer who works at the Federal Highway headquarters as a senior project development and environmental specialist in the Office of Project Development and Environmental Review. She's responsible for providing technical assistance and project oversight regarding NEPA compliance to Federal Highway Division offices, federal partners, and state and local agencies. Carolyn is the NEPA lead for the Environmental Justice, Title VI compliance in NEPA, context-sensitive solutions and design, and public involvement departments. Carolyn is a licensed professional engineer and holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Southern University and A&M College in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a master's degree from Michigan State University at East Lansing, Michigan. We'll hold questions today until the end of Carolyn's presentation. If questions come to mind during the presentation, you can write in the question box and go to webinar or email info@nato.org. So right now I'm going to pass things over to Carolyn and let her start her presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Can everyone see and hear me?
Yep, looks great. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, hello, everyone. Again, my name is Carolyn Nelson, and I'm with the Federal Highway Administration Office of Project Development and Environmental Review in Washington, D.C. headquarters. And today I'd like to provide you with an overview of virtual public involvement, also known as VPI, as well as some of the tools that are best effective for EJ communities, underserved communities, is also LEP communities, and just in communities in general, how best to use it. Now, VPI is FHWA's, one of FHWA's Everyday Counts initiatives, which basically provides an innovative approach to public involvement for both the planning and the project development phase of your project. So from long-range transportation planning through the environmental review process, as well as into the decision-making process at the project level. Okay, before we get going, as you can see, there's a little poll on the screen, and this is just going to give me a quick idea of who is in the audience. If you wouldn't mind, yes, a poll will appear on your screen. Just take a minute to select where you're from, just a quick poll, so we can just get a basic feel for who we have in the audience with us here today.
Just over half of you have voted. So we'll give it about 5 more seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll close the poll now.
Okay, wonderful. Looks like we have a lot of people from the regional organization, MPOs, not, that's great. We have a few from the DOTs and local public agencies and the state DOTs. Wonderful, as well as the RTA, regional transit agencies. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is an overview of what I plan to discuss today. So I'll basically go over some public involvement challenges that we all face for public involvement. We'll talk about some of the issues that we face today, and as well as some of the ways to overcome many of those challenges. I will go into a VPI overview to talk about what virtual public involvement means, particularly from the federal highway perspective. We will also address some VPI tools and techniques that are very useful to implementing virtual public involvement, and hopefully we will have time for a few questions at the end of the session. So let's start with talking about public involvement overall and how important public involvement is to everything that we do as transportation professionals. Now, as you may know, public involvement is a critical component in the transportation decision-making process because it allows for meaningful participation from the public, as well as getting input from participating individuals from the public. Now, as daily users of our transportation system, the public has useful opinions, insights, thoughts, and ideas on things that work best for the state transportation agencies, the MPOs, local agencies, particularly on the needs that they have for the transportation system, and even to the point of some elements of design for the transportation system. Now, early and strong public involvement is very important. It has the potential to accelerate project delivery because you get an understanding of the issues that stakeholders have early in the process, as well as accelerating project delivery because you are addressing issues that you may not have normally been aware of as the project is progressing. However, sometimes our traditional public meetings just do not live up to our potential, and to be quite honest, they lack a very critical component of diversity. I'm sure that we've all been a part of public meetings, as you see here on the screen, which is with much lower than hoped for attendance, as well as very disappointing engagements or lack thereof engagements from the individuals that are attending. So why would we change our traditional approach to public involvement? Well, despite the importance of public involvement in developing meaningful and effective plans, securing a broad-based involvement across a diverse landscape of individuals can be significantly challenging. What might be considered a traditional approach to a public involvement will tend to draw a more traditional crowd. So using printed legal notices in newspapers and printed publications, while it may be great, you're only really reaching a very small self-selecting group of individuals that utilize that type of information in today's more technological age. Therefore, your public meetings may lack a high level of attendance, or they're only frequented by people that are very passionate about the project or that really have very vocal concerns about the project, which could shut other people down. But they may not be attended by those that can give you a more representative viewpoint from a regional perspective, from a statewide perspective, as well as from a local perspective. Because sometimes people are just uncomfortable attending meetings like that. Now, there's other things that have a problem with public involvement, and that does include language barriers, cultural barriers, and basically our busy schedules and time schedules that we have for people. So even considering all of these things, that doesn't mean, it's very important that we don't take a low participation at public involvement meetings to mean that people are not interested in the planning or the project development process. It could just mean that lower participation with people means that we need to have a more 21st century approach to bringing people into the 21st century for our transportation projects. Now, I'll talk very briefly about some of the benefits of having virtual public involvement, VPI. It is definitely a much more effective and efficient tool because it provides the opportunity to engage those that will be otherwise unable to participate in our processes. That's both planning as well as project development. It makes it easier for people to participate. It makes it much more interactive for people to participate. And oftentimes it'll make it more enjoyable for people. Now, usually virtual public involvements can also be achieved at a much less expensive process, because you don't have the boards to use and the printed papers to use, the printed materials to hand out, and it can usually be done with fewer staff at your meetings. Even if you pair it with an in-person meeting, using your virtual public involvement, pair it with in-person public involvement. But the feedback that we get from virtual public involvement meetings is very critical, because it allows you to reach more people and to get a better understanding from the stakeholders in general, what they would like to see and not like to see as the project progresses forward. So now I'm going to take several minutes to talk a little bit about the virtual tools that we have in place and some of the techniques that we've used for virtual public involvement. So VPI is, technically speaking, from our perspective, we have a definition for virtual public involvement. It is the use of digital technology to engage individuals or to visualize projects and plans. And yes, that definition is broad, but it is intentionally broad, as you will see, because there's so many effective ways to have a quality public involvement activities using virtual means, which we will get into. We will discuss 8 categories of virtual public involvement that we've kind of pulled together to help explain how VPI can be better used to help you with your outreach to the public. So some of the tools that we will look at today are as listed. Now, the landscape for virtual public involvement tools is very broad and diverse. So basically what we've done at Federal Highway is to organize those tools into 8 categories that I'll go over. It's mobile applications, project visualizations, do-it-yourself videos, crowdsourcing tools, virtual town halls, online mapping tools, your all-in-one tools, and digital tools to enhance in-person events. So we'll talk very briefly about each one of those. So again, I'm gonna spend a little bit of information about the different types of tools and techniques, and then how best they can be used, how the best way to use each one of these tools, why you will want to use these tools for a particular outreach or reason, and then where some of these current tools are being implemented in the field as of today. So our first category is mobile applications, and I must say it's probably one of the most popular methods of virtual public involvement. It allows the users to download and install information on their smartphones. Everyone has a smartphone nowadays. This is one of the most popular uses, particularly even in our EJ communities. It allows users to obtain information, basically to submit their own text and their own images and other multimedia information, as well as giving them notifications on updates of projects and when meetings can be held. Some mobile apps also allow for geotagging, what we call geotagging, for very specific locations. These mobile phone apps can be used with smartphones, and they are much more useful than your traditional form of media. Even for my young adults in my family, they don't move without their mobile phone. I mean, literally from room to room. People always have their mobile phones right in their hands or in their pockets, particularly that younger generation. This is an example of a mobile app from the Delaware Department of Transportation, and they developed a mobile app for a range of activities, from sharing information on project planning and alerting stakeholders to upcoming public meetings, to giving a way also for the public to report maintenance issues that they may see as they're just driving down the road. They can let the Department of Transportation know if there's issues that need to be addressed through the mobile app. Now, the second category we'll talk about is project visualizations. And again, project visualizations are becoming very popular, a very popular form of the public involvement tool. These project visualizations can utilize various tools such as 3D modeling, animation, virtual reality, videos, and anything else like that that can help better illustrate how the project will be done. These tools can be dispersed across the online channels such as social medias and websites, as well as being presented at your in-person meetings, which is wonderful. It basically enhances the meetings that the in-person meetings that you could have, as well as helping with other virtual public involvement means that we will talk about later. Now, visualizations, I would say, are probably most effective, but not only in the project development and design process, because visualizations provide stakeholders with a much greater sense of how the project will impact them and what the project is seeking to accomplish. It makes all of the projects seem much more real to the stakeholders. Now, visualization is great, and I really like it because it can help explain a project to anyone, irregardless of their background or their prior knowledge of the project. Visualizations really help capture what you're trying to say with the projects. Now, here's an example from the Washington Department of Transportation. They have a visualization engineering resource group at WashDOT, and they develop visualizations to basically support the department's project development processes. They combine 3D visualizations, models, as well as some of the videos, and they basically animate the visuals to provide the public with a much better sense of how the proposed project will impact them. And I would say from attending some of their meetings, the improved communication that's provided through these tools plays a huge and very important role in reducing project delays, because the public has a much clearer idea of how the project will affect them as provided by the visualization. Now, also, this is an example from Federal Highway, Federal Lands Office, and it is basically just a 3D visualization of a project, and it gives the public a very important perspective on the proposed design of a project. Now, this is particularly important when you're working on design projects where aesthetics are highly valued by your stakeholders. For example, in federal lands, we work a lot with Fish and Wildlife, but particularly with the National Park Service, where the aesthetics and the visual impact that projects have is very important on how the project will look for the future. Okay, so I want to pause here and hear from you about the two categories that we've discussed already. So based on what you've heard, I'd like to know what your experience may have been or your level of interest in using mobile apps or project visualizations in planning or project development. And even also, in addition to that, please feel free to type into the chat pod why you are or are not interested, because we'd like to hear any positive or negative experiences you might have already had or you're experiencing with the tools. So I'd like to just give a few seconds for you guys to let us know your interest there in the two apps that we've done so far. And I'll let Carrie let me know when we're ready.
Yep, we've got just about half of people who have voted. We'll give it a couple more seconds if you're planning to vote.
Great.
And if you're logged in as a panelist for any of the Session A sessions today, you can type in the chat box. Attendees can type in the questions box with any of your experiences. We'll go ahead and close that poll now.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. We have quite a few people that would be interested in a mobile app or the project visualization. That is great. Just gives us a better idea of what some of the thoughts that you might have. And please feel free, my contact information will be at the end of the presentation. So I'd love to hear from you about your interest there. Okay, so we'll move on to the do-it-yourself videos. Now, today's tablets and mobile phones make it so much easier to create high quality live and recorded do-it-yourself videos. I'm sure we've all seen them. Some we wish we had not seen at all. But these do-it-yourself videos can be posted on sites like YouTube, or Facebook Live. It could be shared on various types of social media as well as project websites. Now, by going the do-it-yourself route, planners, project managers, environmentalists can create very personalized videos that's accessible to stakeholders to tell them about, give them shared information about the project. Now, the good thing about doing do-it-yourself videos is that because video capabilities are included in basically so much of the hardware that we carry around in our back pocket, you really don't need a professional videographer to create your message. Although it is fine, because some agencies do have or do utilize a professional or in-house staffer to help them create their do-it-yourself videos. Now, additionally, because the hardware like digital cameras with image stabilizations and drones and other equipments is much easier to come by now because of the mobile technology, it's not an expensive option if you wanted to use it. And it basically makes it easier for individuals to utilize this, particularly if they have a very technical background. It could be very easy to create a do-it-yourself video. This is an example here of a do-it-yourself video that was created by the Utah Department of Transportation. And they basically created this video to give the public an example of what they were doing in the area for a small project. There is, hopefully Carrie can put the link to the video. We won't play it here in the chat pod. It's about 2 minutes, but just to give you an idea of some of the things that they have done. It's just a wonderful little video, again, about 2 minutes to explain what they did as for one of their projects in Utah. The next tool, our next category we'll talk about is crowdsourcing tool. Now, crowdsourcing is the use of digital tools, both online and mobile, which we will have some examples, to basically assemble ideas, comments, or suggestions, as well as voting, to provide a forum for others to assess the value of the information or to suggest voting about the information that you receive. Now, crowdsourcing tools are effective at basically generating input and can be paired with photos, videos, maps, and various other types of media to help stimulate the input that you can get from this form of media. Basically, by voting on an idea or praising an idea, a stakeholder can engage early in the process, and it's a very quick, easy way to do it. It's a very low stakes way to do it, and it provides information to the agency on their thoughts early in the process of what the agency plans on doing. Crowdsourcing tools, I would say, are most useful for beginning the conversation about how you want to spend transportation resources most efficiently and effectively. That's the best way to use, one of the best ways to use like a crowdsourcing tool. By sourcing ideas from the public and allowing people to vote on these ideas, this allows officials to get a much better sense of what the public would like to see and also what the public would not like to see. So I'll give you an example. Here is an example from Connecticut. It is called the Let's Go CT example. And it's basically an interactive social media platform, and it guides the community to give a conversation about the long-range transportation plan for the state. It uses a very informal survey to prompt thoughtful responses and ideas from the public about the project and the process. The platform also helps people to, it stresses to people to stay engaged in the process through attending meetings, public meetings, and public informationals about the projects as they are happening. So again, as before, I'd like to hear from you about your opinions on the do-it-yourself video, as well as the crowdsourcing tool and your level of interest in these tools. We spelled high there wrong, but you know we mean high level of interest. Hopefully we can discuss a little bit later on your thoughts. So as we're going through these tools and we're doing the polls, please feel free to take notes, and hopefully we can discuss some of those things a little later if you have questions. about some of the tools that we are discussing today. And I'll let Carrie let me know when we've got it.
We're just over half of folks have voted.
Okay.
I have put links to the DIY and crowdsourcing additional information. GoToWebinar is preventing me from copy pasting those links, so I'm typing them. So if I've made any errors, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay. There also at the end, there'll be a link to fact sheets, and so
Okay.
that too.
And it looks like most people have voted, so I'll close that.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we have a pretty high and medium interest for the do-it-yourself videos and crowdsourcing, which is great because they are, again, very easy tools to use, particularly those do-it-yourself videos. Wonderful. And I thank everyone again for participating in my little polls as we go. Okay, so tool number 5 we are on. Virtual town halls, one of probably my favorite tools. Virtual town halls are also called online public meetings. You might have heard that a lot. Now, this approach, I like them all, but this approach allows stakeholders to participate in meetings remotely, which basically removes a common barrier that we have of people not being able to participate and be engaged in the meetings, pretty much like we're doing here today. You don't need to be physically present in the space to learn about something, as we aren't physically together for you guys to learn about virtual public involvement, but you can also learn about the project, you can learn about the plans, you can learn about upcoming information from it, and you can do that all in a virtual means. And it's just a wonderful way to reach out to a more diverse group of people, as well as to increase the engagement of your meetings, as well as to reach out to traditionally underserved communities. Here's an example from the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, where they used a virtual town hall meeting to discuss their fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. The online meeting helped to improve participation by almost tenfold, and it elicited a huge amount of useful feedback on the project process and things that people wanted to see and wanted them to address for their upcoming year. It was hugely successful. Now, virtual town halls are very flexible tools, I would say. They can be used both high-tech and low-tech. The agencies have, many agencies have been successful in reducing the barriers to engaging with virtual town halls because, again, it doesn't require you to be present at the meeting, and you can usually assess the information from your internet access or even from a smartphone or a tablet. And if you don't have any of those, you can also call in to some virtual town hall meetings from a landline, which is great. Now, in areas where high-speed internet may not be common, some agencies have also combined the virtual town halls with conference telelines with the local television stations and local broadcasts to help people be able to access the information. Another thing is that agencies have also can offer it for non-English speakers to ensure that the LEP populations are also able to participate in some of the town hall meetings. Here's an example of that here. The Alamo area MPO, they basically employ online public meetings to help, again, to reduce barriers to engagement in the planning process because it's difficult to get people to attend these meetings in the planning process. This online meeting basically contains interactive aspects throughout the website where it's mapping, there are survey tools where people can just explore and interact at their own pace on this website. And in addition to that, they can attend recordings of in-person meetings at a time that's most convenient for them, you know, due to family and other issues and whatnot. Now, next tool is online mapping tools. Now, online mapping platforms allows participants to leave a comment directly and input directly on a web-based map. It's really, really great. It's a very useful tool for planners as well as in project development. We'll talk about both to see where the public might want to see changes or modifications in the transportation system as they think it may be necessary. Here's an example. Again, it's the Alamo Area MPO, where they developed an interactive tool. It was a mapping tool to provide the public with a way to see projects proposed for their TIP, their Regional Transportation Improvement Project. It's kind of small here on my screen. Hopefully it's larger on your screen. But you can see the legend on the left-hand side, which shows where they're adding capacity. They're putting in bicycle or pedestrian lanes to just give people a better sense or an idea of what their planning is for the entire region. Online mapping tools are great because it's a very easy way to voice your input on the proposed project. It is a useful tool early in the process as well as in the project development process, but the primary goal for the planning process tool is to determine a location for a project rather than aiding the project in the design level, like your visualization tools may be. Locating projects in a larger geographic context really makes the projects much less abstract. It makes it more it gives it more understanding to the public, and they're better able to comment on it. These are very useful tools where it saves a lot of time and energy from the staff because the comments are collected directly onto the map that's provided. Now, here is another example from Utah. The Utah DOT uses something called story maps and interactive maps for their environmental review process, their NEPA process, as well as the preliminary planning stages of a project across their state. The tools here from Utah allow the public to basically drop pins on the map to leave comments for officials to have a better idea of their stance on a particular project. You see, yes. The story maps are very, very helpful to the public because they break down complicated information for the general public to understand. They can, for the story maps, they can zoom into a place in their neighborhood, within their block, to see the information about a project. And most importantly for stakeholders, they can see how it is most directly affecting them, which is very important to most anyone that attends a public meeting. As part of the long-range transportation planning process, this is an example from Boston. They have something called Go Boston 2030, and it is from the Boston Transportation Department. They invested in a web tool that allows users to share their ideas as written concepts by drawing lines or shapes, again, directly on a map. This tool was optimized so that it can be used both on a desktop as well as on a mobile browser, which you see here. But it allows people to comment on their process any way they'd like to, directly on a map of where the project would be. Okay, now as before, I would again like to hear about you and your opinions about the virtual town halls as well as the online mapping tools and your level of interest in using these tools. And again, hopefully we'll get a chance to discuss these a little later, but just give an idea of where you might be. And please feel free to enter your thoughts into the chat pod about these tools as well, that we can hopefully get to a little later. Turn it back over to Carrie.
Carolyn, there is one question that has come in while folks are voting on this poll. I'll go ahead and ask that. Amy asks, do you have any good examples for using VPI in planning for long-range plans or TIP development and getting the public involved in that? Planning isn't sexy and people want to see the end results, what the project will look like.
Yes, many of these online tools that we're talking about now are useful and have been used for the STIP as well as the TIP, but we are going to get into, I think, one more tool next that has been used in the STIP program because it gives people an idea of what the state is planning to do for the future and getting them more involved in the process.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share the results now.
Okay. Virtual town halls, online mapping's great. It's quite a bit of interest in those. I think that's great. They are just wonderful tools. Particularly, I would say in regards to the question that was just asked, virtual town halls are, I would say, most useful in the planning process, because people are able to attend that meeting to discuss, okay, what is the plan for the next year, or for the next 5 years, or for the next 10 years, because you're basically meeting with the council as they are looking at that long range transportation plan, and you're able to participate and you're able to comment on the plan as they are developing it. So those are very, very good tools. Thank you, Carrie. And also we will go into our next tool, which are all-in-one tools. And this is number 7, I think, as we're starting to wrap up with our tools. So basically what we are calling all-in-one tools are I don't want to say complex, but it's an engagement platform that brings together a variety of sources, which includes your crowdsourcing, your surveying, as well as some of your mapping tools. It's a category that offers a one-stop shop for informing the public about a project and engaging individuals through your polls and surveys, which is a lot of times you're interested in doing in the early planning process. Here is an example of an online tool. This example is from North Carolina, and they first used this very popular tool for them as part of their public involvement process for their 2018-2027 STIP program. It is a very straightforward interactive page that basically boosted their public involvement by 19 times. Because it allowed individuals from across the state to get involved in the outreach efforts. Now the image that you see here is a homepage for divisions 5 and 6, which are located in the southeastern part of the state. But it was such an amazing tool that they used for their STIP that they were just astounded how well it worked, as well as how the outreach for this tool just increased the participation for people involved. Now, one of the things that they found here, and this is still North Carolina, they found that using this all-in-one tool, it significantly increased their participation, because again, it eliminated the barrier to people participating. The barriers that people previously had to participating in something like a long-range transportation planning meeting disappeared. People were better able to understand the project and participate when it was convenient for them to participate, as well as being able to provide information on the project or provide that feedback. Now, one thing about this project that they told us was that this approach, which was awesome, it increased engagement among younger citizens ages 26 to 40, who are most often underrepresented in the planning process, because it was a tool that is very much user-friendly to them. So you had quite a few people that were involved in the long-range transportation planning process, because it was done in a way that the outreach was done in a way that was very useful to a significantly larger portion of the population that traditionally was not involved. Now, the last tool we'll talk about, but it is not the least thing that you should do, is digital tools to enhance events. Now, as we talked about all of the visual tools, I do want to say that although online and entirely virtual tools are becoming a much bigger part of public involvement, in-person meetings are still always important, I would say. But digital tools to enhance your in-person events are important, because it still helps improve the quality and the quantity of engagement at your public meetings. It's a very beneficial way to bridge the digital divide that people typically have. So when you offer them a tool to participate virtually when they are at an in-person event. And it is also a wonderful way to engage your EJ communities, your underserved populations, as well as your LEP communities. Here's an example of a digital tool to enhance your events. Again, this is from the Alamo Area MPO, and they use live polling to help enhance their public meeting experience, and it's really wonderful. The technology allows the MPO to engage participants at the meetings and they can display the responses in real time, very similar to what we're trying to do here. This helps improve the quality of engagement at the meeting, as pretty much every voice is heard, especially those that are more non-vocal type participants, but still would like to have their voices heard. It's very important for people to feel like they have a voice in the process, they can be heard in the process, and that you are really listening to the input that they have. Okay, so one last time, if you could let me know your interest in the last two categories of VPI tools, the all-in-one tool and the tool to enhance in-person engagement, that would be great. And as you are filling out this recent poll, I want to just take this time now to thank you for participating in the little quick polls, because it really gives me and Federal Highway in general kind of a baseline to where agencies are with looking at VPI tools. So it's a very, very helpful tool for us to understand how things are being utilized.
Okay, just over half of people have voted now, so we'll give it a few more seconds. If you'd like to vote, go ahead and do so.
And this is the last poll you'll get, trust me.
All right, we'll get that poll closed and show the results.
Okay, wonderful. This is quite a bit of people like the all-in-one tool, as well as the tools to enhance in-person engagement, which is wonderful, because we do still like to let people know that having in-person meetings is still a wonderful way to go with having your even including virtual public involvement meetings. So thank you everyone for taking that last poll. I truly do appreciate your participation there. Okay, so I've given you guys a lot of information about VPI tools. Now, to help you navigate all of this, because I know it's kind of hard to take notes as fast as I was going, but I wanted to hit all 8. But we do have VPI tool fact sheets at Federal Highway. Hopefully, we can get that link to the fact sheets into the chat pod. If not, I'll make sure Carrie has it to send out to all participants so you can have it. You can download the links if you like or print them off, but they're just fact sheets about each one of the tools that I talked about. Some of the examples of the tools are on the sheets. Other examples I didn't talk about that are on the tools, but there's 8 fact sheets, one for each tool that was discussed. And that is the presentation that I have on virtual public involvement. Again, my name is Carolyn Nelson and my contact information is on the screen. If you'd like more information, also on the screen is our website for Federal Highway, VPI website, to give you a little bit more information about VPI from the project planning, as well as the project development process for VPI. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. We look forward to questions from attendees now, and to ask questions, just use the question box and go to webinar email at info@nato.org. I think everybody's probably figured this out by now, but do we have any questions?
Steph, there are a couple of questions that just came in. There's one from Krishna in the chat box. Oh, I'm not sure you can see it. I'll read it out. Krishna asked, our region serves areas with little to no broadband connectivity. Carolyn, do you have suggestions to reach out to the residents in those areas?
Yes, that's part of what we're looking at, even moving into EDC 6 is areas, a lot of rural and remote areas that do not have a lot of broadband. And we do, even a lot of times in those cases, you'd be surprised at how some of our mobile apps can work best with low broadband, as well as using, or I would say incorporating your live virtual town hall meetings and displaying them on a local broadcast channel. Because even in low broadband areas, a lot of the TV stations are able to pick up on the town hall meetings if they choose to televise them and stream it out to stakeholders and individuals in that particular area.
Thank you. And Steph, I just sent a couple questions your way, but I'm not sure if you can see them.
I don't think I'm able to see the.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask them. Chris asks, are there reliable sources for technical information or considerations on making VPI accessible to persons with disabilities or to persons who don't speak English as their primary language?
We try to make sure VPI addresses particularly LEP communities, disadvantaged communities, but what was the first part of the question? Are there?
Let's see, outside of LEP communities, it was making VPI accessible to people with disabilities. Do you have any resources about good models for doing that?
For disabilities, we basically what we try to look at and what we try to have peer exchanges for, and that's a very good question, is to make sure that we think that's oftentimes why people don't attend in-person public meetings, because of language barriers or because of physical disabilities. So if you have the means to hold a meeting, and that just because you're not attending meetings, we want people to understand that doesn't mean people aren't interested in the project. They just may have issues why they can't attend the project in person, which is why we're trying to make sure that each state is using some form of virtual outreach to the public so that they can attend these meetings virtually, so that you can attend meetings the way we are now, whether it's a streamcast or if it's by a mobile phone or if it's by your iPad, so you don't necessarily have to be there in person. And again, as I showed in one of the Alamo areas, if it is an LEP community, it can be streamed simultaneously in a different language so that you can also participate and understand as the meeting is going on, it's being done in a different language, and you can still participate. And you don't necessarily have to be there if you're not understanding everything that's being said and provided.
Okay. There's one more question here. It seems that the COVID-19 pandemic has jump-started a lot more use of virtual town halls and other forms of online public involvement than many planning agencies might otherwise have done this spring and summer. Would you agree? Are you hearing the same thing, that there's an increasing number of planning agencies doing VPI?
Absolutely. Virtual public involvement, we rolled out virtual public involvement in EDC 5. We have numbers for our EDC initiatives. So it rolled out about 2 years ago is when we started it. We were trying to get states to utilize it. We had about of 52, we work with our division offices. Of our 52 division offices, we had about 16 that said that they would like to institutionalize it, which basically means they like to use it for pretty much everything they do is outreach to the public. That number has recently gone up to 38, and now it's recently gone up to 49. And then the few offices that don't have it are actually talking to us now about utilizing it. Yes, I do think that is one of the biggest reasons why we've seen an uptick in people, because you still have to engage the public. There are certain things that, from a federal perspective, certain guidelines that still have to be met for your public outreach, and to let people know what you're doing. So how best to do that is, using a virtual means. So it's really shown people that, this is something that we need to do. What is the best way to do it? So definitely is help to increase that outreach. Unfortunately, it's done the outreach for us for virtual public involvement.
Carolyn, there's one more question here. Are you seeing trends across the country that people are moving away from paid newspaper legal ads and more online VPI tools instead, or both together?
kind of yes and no. Again, very good question. Yes, people are moving away from a lot of the more traditional means of advertising in newspapers. Even myself and my husband, we receive newspaper by phone. And that's how people are really wanting to be engaged nowadays. It is still important to have an in-person meeting, but from the federal perspective, we're not pushing that it's a must. That's why we have that last tool, using digital tools for in-person meetings, because some people, that's how they best communicate, is to basically have a meeting where I can go there and I can ask you your questions. I can ask my questions. I can see the displays, but we're still trying to work them into a virtual means, if only because of situations like what we're in now, an emergency situation where you still need to have public input on a project prior to moving forward. And there's so many effective ways to do that. But a lot of it is getting people used to it. Just as many people that are not using the printed newspapers and what you have, just as many people that are still using it. So I would say it's moving away from it, but I wouldn't say it's moving completely away from in-person meetings. I think that would be a while before that actually happened.
That's interesting. I'm also hearing reporting about newspapers losing ad revenue as businesses are shut down for COVID. So kind of interesting to think about those trends. It's nice to get earned media when they cover something that agencies are doing, but sort of nicer to not have to pay for legal ads at the same time.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to do, because it's cheaper.
We've got a question here, or excuse me, not a question, just a remark from Jessica in Kentucky. This has been a very informative session with some new ideas for us in Kentucky. And Jonathan wants to know what the picture is behind you.
That is a picture of where I went to school. I got my master's at Michigan State University. It is in the Breslin Center for MSU.
He says thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, Carrie?
No, that's all our questions. You can go ahead and close us out, Steph.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Carolyn. That was, I actually also, as a MPO director, found that really informative and really helpful. We do a lot of large projects here, at least by our scale, and we're really trying to find more innovative ways to reach a more diverse group of people. So it was great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Today will be available on the Nat'l website after the conference, and today's session has been approved by AICP for credits. So you can go ahead and get your credits as well. I hope everyone has been enjoying the conference, and please stay in room A for the closing plenary at 3 p.m. Eastern on addressing equity in transportation planning and services, followed by NATO closing and wrap up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.